And yeah, you're seeing it really at the processing. And, as meat processing, especially in chicken, has become more vertically integrated, these companies also have oversight of chicken production as well. So one of the major issues that I thought was really, really fascinating is that Tyson Chicken, which is, one of the largest chicken producers in the world, noted that they changed out the male rooster that they were using, and suddenly they realized that they were having major issues with egg laying. So they were switching back, but they said that it could impact chicken sales through the mid-year of 2022.
The guys from Tyson said, we're changing out the male rooster, and they said, quite frankly, they made a bad decision on it. I mean, I don't know what prompted it in the first place, right? But it just wasn't working out for them. So this big disruption right there is going to have those rippling effects. And for other people, there's rising costs in the market. There's the costs of shipping are increasing. Plastic and packaging is all increasing. I think they called it the three layers of that sandwich, and it's not delicious for these chicken manufacturers. So that's why chicken tenders are so hard to get, and the prices are going up. Medical supplies and equipment. This is another interesting one too, because this has to deal with components that come from the other side of the world. In some cases, crutches, wheelchairs, walkers. These things are really hard to get. It could take weeks, 8 weeks for a wheelchair. That's how long it took to get there.
Yeah, I was calling around to medical supply stores. I'd heard it had become a real issue to the point that hospitals were actually asking people for donations of crutches and wheelchairs, which is, kind of a troubling thing to hear when you hear of major hospitals needing donations to make sure that patients, have access to things they really need. If you need crutches or a wheelchair, you really do need them. So it was really fascinating to push into that. And then, talking to the stores, they said, we can't obtain them for this long, so let's go to suppliers. And the suppliers were saying, especially with electric wheelchairs, finding tires is very, very difficult. But also, a lot of their products are just kind of sitting in their factories as they're waiting for just some minor components from China. A lot of medical supplies are actually produced here in the United States, but getting it through the ports, the major shipping issues we've been hearing have been consistent across medical supply companies as well. And they're also facing, obviously, labor shortages, as a lot of folks are right now.
Yeah, for those tires that they need for those wheelchairs, they typically would take about 5 weeks to get some from China or Vietnam. They're saying there's delays up to 90 days for them to arrive for certain manufacturers. So, that really puts a strain on them, their ability to finish making them, right? And then delivering out after that.
I just think that one was a particularly important industry to kind of highlight, just because, obviously those are people who are in real need too. You can't go without your electric wheelchair if you really need it. Hearing these kind of lag times for folks in those situations is definitely a huge challenge for those folks.
We've been hearing for some time now about the impact of all these supply chain issues on holiday shopping. So these next two are pretty closely related. Toys, we've heard about a lot, and then also video game consoles, really hot things right now like the PS5 and the brand new Xbox. A couple of different issues affecting them both, but a lot of the same stuff. Some things are caught up on the ships and the ports with the electronic components. They're looking at those semiconductors that they need. Both of these are being affected.
Yeah, definitely a major issue. A lot of that is coming across the ports, whether it's shipping from Vietnam and Southeast Asia or China. Companies like Nintendo are saying, hey, we're going to start rethinking about, how we're manufacturing products like the Switch, because a lot of companies are just having to really kind of go back to their plans and say, hey, is there any better way that we can get through this? But yeah, it's just a consistent problem where you might have 90% of the product done, but then you're just missing a few component parts.
And the attitude, you read about the attitude from people like at PlayStation. They say, well, if you get it this Christmas, you do. If not, you're going to get it next Christmas. The demand is so high for those that they're not necessarily going above and beyond to try to continue manufacturing those. They're going to complete what they have, and then if you get it, you're one of the lucky ones.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And if you look at kind of how business models work with video game companies and video game systems, those are split out for a number of years, right? And the latest Xbox lasts for a number of years. Typically, we're about a year out since they released the new PlayStation, the new Xbox. This holiday season would be a huge, huge year for PlayStation and Xbox to sell new games that are specific to their systems. We're not going to see that this year. So it just kind of lays out their economic model a little bit further. And, obviously our two companies, I don't think anyone needs to be very worried about.
sweatpants and athleisure. Now, this one's kind of funny just because you don't really think of it that much, but more than 97% of apparel sold in the U.S. is made in other countries. So, right there, you already know why there's delays.
Yeah, huge delays. And what I thought was really interesting about this one, when I was diving into it a little bit deeper, was a lot of the impacts we have to think about are not just immediately caused by the pandemic or new administration. There's also some effects from, the past administration. The Trump administration's trade war with China made a lot of businesses rethink where they were manufacturing to avoid tariffs. So a lot of clothing manufacturers have moved to Vietnam and Southeast Asia to kind of avoid the conflict that the administration had with China. And that appears to have hurt them a bit. Recently, Vietnam saw a great number of shutdowns because of COVID, and their plants have slowly come back online. But production was already quite a bit lower than the plants were in China. So now they're shipping across the Pacific, and now they're having issues there. A lot of them are turning now to shipping by air, which is more expensive. It's just kind of, again, another snowball effect of decisions and choices that then go back to affect our supply chain.
This report's all part of NBC News' 2-week series called Race to Deliver, featuring coverage of the supply crisis in the United States. So a really good look into this right now. Phil McCaughlin, reporter at NBC News, thank you very much for joining us.
Yes,
Hey, thanks so much for having me.
Thanks for tuning in to the Daily Dive Weekend Edition. You can catch a fresh episode of the podcast every morning, Monday through Friday, on iHeartRadio. You can also follow us on social media at Daily Dive Pod in both Twitter and Instagram. Stay tuned for the Jesus Christ Show next. But first, into the newsroom. This is KFI Am 640, more stimulating talk.
Opinion without the freak.
KFI.
And KOST HD2.
Los Angeles, Orange County.
Live everywhere on the iHeartRadio app.
Travel ban coming. I'm Brian Bruman, live from the KFI 24-hour newsroom. The U.S. is implementing travel restrictions for non-citizens because of the spread of the Omicron COVID-19 variant. Vice President Harris says the administration is keeping a close eye on the spread of the Omicron variant.
But again, I can't stress enough. One, if you have not had the booster shot, get the booster shot. Cannot stress enough the importance of getting vaccinated for those who have not been vaccinated.
Starting tomorrow, travel will be restricted from South Africa and 7 other countries due to the new strain. This comes just weeks after pandemic-related travel restrictions were lifted for visitors to the U.S. from about 30 countries. California Democratic Congresswoman Barbara Lee says the Biden administration has to be careful to do the right thing while avoiding the appearance of discrimination.
We're just learning about this new variant, so I'm not certain, and I have to be honest, I'm not certain what the policy should be, because we could